Good evening. Police say it was a shootout outside of a North York apartment building last night, sending an 18-year-old to hospital with serious injuries.
Today, that building is riddled with bullets as police search for the shooters. CTV's Beth McDonnell is live in North York tonight with the latest. Beth.
Nathan, crews spent most of the day fixing the windows and doors of the lobby. Much of it was riddled with bullet holes from the shootout. The evidence of bullets blowing past glass and puncturing metal are scattered around the front entrance of the building, around the lobby, on doors next to the lobby, up on a third-floor window, and inside on an elevator door.
Steady, continuous. And it went on for maybe a good 7 minutes, I'd have to guess. It sounded like machine guns or something to me,
A police source confirms there was an exchange of gunfire in a shootout. Officers say around 11:15 last night, many shots were fired, leaving a young man, 18 years old, seriously hurt. And people living in this large residential high-rise on Chalk Farm Drive near Jane and Wilson in North York, frightened.
They have to do something about this. They need to do something about this thing.
Resident Suleiman Dahir says for the last 3 or 4 months, there have been teenagers with masks hanging out near the front of the building.
Smoking here is cigarette or something, I don't know. Then they have been gathering here, spending all the night, speaking loudly, doing dancing, music, drinking.
Police haven't said anything about who was involved or the events leading up to the shooting. Dahir says he contacted management and warned them.
Then I said, before any problem comes, now it's a good time to solve the problem. Nobody listening. Only they come here to collect the money, and also zero management and zero maintenance and zero security.
The company running the building says it regrets the incident, adding in a statement, "We want to assure the community that we have a comprehensive security model in place, which is continually being strengthened to ensure the comfort and safety of our residents. Recent developments are part of our ongoing efforts to enhance security, and we are actively engaging with the community and local authorities to support these initiatives. The well-being of our residents remains our top priority."
I'm sending a message to the young kids here. We don't need anybody dying here, because you are the future of the country.
Dahir is imploring management to bring on a large number of security guards. Police say a light-colored vehicle was seen taking off. Other than that, there is no suspect description. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Nathan, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. A man was rushed to hospital after a shooting in Rexdale this afternoon.
It happened near Islington and the 401. Police say they were called just after 3:30 to the area of Islington and Bergamot Ave. They say the victim was found in a vehicle and was located with a gunshot wound. Multiple bullet holes can be seen in the rear passenger window on the driver's side of the car. The victim was rushed to hospital with what paramedics say are serious but non-life-threatening injuries. Police say they have no suspect descriptions at this time.
And Toronto police are investigating after shots were fired from a vehicle this morning.
This happened around 11 in the area of St. Clair and Oakwood.
We received initial reports with regards to a fight or an altercation that happened on the road. When we arrived, we learned that there were shots that had been fired out of a vehicle, and the vehicle had subsequently fled westbound on Rosemount Avenue.
Police say no one was injured in this shooting. They're still looking for the suspect vehicle. Investigators say the shooting occurred while students at nearby Oakwood Collegiate were on their lunch break. The school was put into lockdown for much of the afternoon.
As the clock ticks towards a potential strike by Air Canada pilots, many travelers are making backup plans.
For some, it means canceling planned trips. For others, it means buying tickets on other airlines. CTV's Mike Walker is live inside Pearson Airport tonight with the very latest. Mike.
Well, Michelle and Nathan, negotiations are continuing with only a couple of days left to reach a deal. Travelers we're speaking with today are worried about the return flights home and are now considering Plan B.
At the country's busiest airport, it's business as usual for arriving and departing Air Canada flights. But travelers like these sisters who will be on a cruise are anxious with time running out to a potential pilot strike.
Though we may not get home if they don't settle.
It's a bit of added extra stress.
Therapist Lee Kellogg is scheduled to return home from the U.S. on Wednesday. That's when Air Canada's 5,200 pilots could walk off the job.
Then I would have, like 8 clients on Wednesday that I'm going to have to cancel, which is not fair for them.
She's hoping the strike will be averted, but with the 72-hour strike or lockout notice possibly being issued Sunday, other travelers are already booking backup plans.
I basically booked a Flair flight home as well. So I'll fly Air Canada if they don't strike, and I'll fly Flair if they do.
Passenger rights advocates are advising travelers to wait it out.
If you buy a backup flight before your flight is canceled, it's not clear whether you can recover the cost of that backup flight. The principle is that you first have to wait until your flight is canceled, then you give the airline a chance to rebook you in accordance with the law.
Air Canada Cargo stopped accepting items such as live animals and perishables. Some aircraft have been rerouted for maintenance during a possible work stoppage. If a deal isn't reached, the airline will start gradually canceling flights on Sunday, leading to a full shutdown on Wednesday.
They want to have what's all called an orderly wind down, which basically means that the aircraft and crew are all where they're supposed to be.
The two sides remain at an impasse over wages. The union wants to narrow the gap between Canadian and American salaries.
Sometimes we really do feel like we're close to getting a deal, and other times we feel like we're still miles apart.
We've offered over 30% increases on wages that can go up to $350,000 per year and more. But we are unfortunately faced with unreasonable wage demand,
leaving travelers anxiously checking their flight schedules.
I'm scheduled to fly home next Thursday to return to work the following Monday. I had to tell the guys that I might be stranded there.
And mulling over other travel options.
Now, both sides say they are committed to continuing negotiations over the weekend to try and reach a deal. Now, if flights are canceled, Air Canada says it will rebook passengers with another airline, but it's not guaranteeing seats will be available. Otherwise, it says refunds will be issued. Reporting live at Pearson Airport, I'm Mike Walker. Nathan, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. Still to come tonight, trying to save a site many say is saving lives. Protesters gathered outside the Kensington Market overdose prevention site in hopes of stopping its closure under new provincial rules.
Let's talk about the forecast, shall we? As far as weekends go in September, we're about to hit the weather jackpot. Straight sunshine and above seasonal heat, I would hazard to say. It's as gorgeous as you could hope for this time of year. Let's see if Jessica Smith agrees with a look at the current conditions. Jess.
Absolutely, Michelle. And it's going to be one of those weekends. If you can spend some time outside, it is going to be beautiful. But we're kind of tiptoeing into the fall season with a very summer-like forecast. So you have to prepare yourself accordingly if you're going to spend any time outdoors. But we're holding on to a more kind of southeasterly wind as we head in towards the early evening. It'll become northeasterly overnight and really, really light, so a nice light breeze out there. We're still sitting in the low to mid-20s, but feeling into the 30s, and it is hot as we head in towards this kind of end to the chapter of our day. Temperature-wise, through the islands, through Pearson, we're still really comfortable, really humid over towards Pearson, and tonight, still above seasonal. Coming up, we'll kind of preview your weekend here at home, and if you're heading out to a cottage, but right now, send things back over to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Jess. Dozens of people gathered outside the Kensington Market supervised drug consumption site, all part of a rally to keep it open.
The protest comes in the face of new provincial rules that would shut it and others down. CTV's John Woodward has the story.
For the crowd gathered outside the Kensington Market overdose prevention site, the issue is deadly serious.
This year alone, we reversed 50 overdoses and saved 50 lives this year.
Some of those people sharing their stories on the microphone.
I feel very safe and grateful for the OPS rooms.
The service has a room where addicts can consume often toxic drugs, and if a user has an overdose, staff are on hand to revive them. In the wake of a shooting outside an East End supervised consumption site last year that killed a mom of 3, the provincial government proposed new rules that they can't be within 200 meters of a school or daycare. The daycare that's too close here is run by the same service.
This site is one of 5 supervised consumption sites in Toronto slated to be shut down by the provincial government that would replace them with treatment centres.
The new rules will also affect at least 2 sites within homeless shelters. The sites in red are the ones that will no longer operate in Toronto. In a statement, a health ministry spokesperson said communities, parents and families across Ontario have made it clear that the presence of drug consumption sites near schools and daycares is leading to serious safety problems. We agree. That's why our government is taking action to keep communities safe while supporting the recovery of those struggling with opioid addiction.
A terrible idea. It means more people will die.
How many? Not clear, but a CTV News review of federal data showed sites facing shutdown in Toronto reversed at least 3 overdoses a day. Across Ontario, it was almost 6 a day. And Toronto Police neighborhood level data didn't show an increase in crime after the sites were brought in. Those who work with addicts say supervised consumption sites keep people alive long enough to access treatment.
I've seen how people have changed their lives overall, like they've been able to have a family, a stable job.
A service these people say doesn't just save lives, it can change them. John Woodward, CTV News.
Police in Kingston have identified 2 people killed yesterday in a triple stabbing at an encampment near a supervised injection site. 38-year-old Taylor Wilkinson and 41-year-old John Hood died after being stabbed around 10:30 yesterday morning. A third victim, a woman, remains in hospital with what are described as life-threatening injuries. Police have charged 47-year-old Andre Wareham with 2 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Kingston's mayor has called for the integrated care hub to be closed immediately and wants to clear the neighboring encampment as well.
2 18-year-olds have been arrested after guns and high-capacity magazines were discovered following a threat made against a Collingwood high school. Police say a former student made the threat against Collingwood Collegiate Institute. Investigators say they received the call about the potential threat on Wednesday, but it was made back in March. Police searched the former student's home in Clearview Township and found 2 guns, high-capacity magazines, and ammunition. He's facing several charges, including uttering threats to cause death. A Collingwood teenager is also facing 2 charges.
And police in York Region have arrested 2 suspects in an armed home invasion in Richmond Hill. This video is from early yesterday morning near Rothbury and Gamble Roads. Police say they were called after 3 suspects smashed a glass door and confronted the residents with guns. No injuries were reported, but the group allegedly fled in the victim's Lamborghini. Within a few hours, police located the stolen vehicle and a white Range Rover stolen in Toronto on Tuesday. They arrested 19-year-old Dilraj Bal of Woodstock and a 16-year-old boy on robbery charges. A third suspect is still on the loose.
Still to come tonight, it's Friday the 13th, which means the town of Port Dover is brimming with bikers. We'll take you to the center of the action just ahead.
Former Headley frontman Jacob Hogarth has lost his appeal for bail. A ruling released today dismissed the application, meaning Hogarth will remain behind bars. The 40-year-old former musician was found guilty back in 2022 of sexual assault, causing bodily harm, and sentenced to 5 years behind bars. He was released on bail pending an appeal. That appeal upheld his conviction, and Hogarth was taken into custody. Hogarth had asked the court to grant him bail as he appealed his case to the Supreme Court of Canada. Hogarth faces another trial in Northern Ontario later this month.
The case of a 20-year-old man accused in a cross-border terror plot went before a Montreal court today. Speaking at a hearing in Montreal, lawyers for Mohammed Shahzeb Khan, who was not present, said they were waiting for extradition documents and for authorization from Canadian officials before proceeding with the trial. Authorities allege Khan, a Pakistani national who was living in Ontario on a student visa, was on his way to New York City to carry out a mass shooting at a Jewish center. Khan faces 3 charges here and 1 in the U.S. of attempting to provide material to support a terrorist organization. U.S. officials want him extradited to stand trial there.
And after 45 days of evidence and legal arguments, the criminal trial for 2 prominent organizers of the Freedom Convoy protests is now over. Tamara Leach and Chris Barber are both accused of mischief, intimidation, and counseling others to break the law, among other charges. The 2022 demonstrations blocked streets in Ottawa for 3 weeks, aimed at pressuring the government to change its pandemic public health policies. The defense argues Leach and Barber were exercising their rights to assembly and expression. A verdict could still be months away.
A Canadian tourist has died after being caught in a sudden snowstorm in Italy's Dolomite Mountains. That's according to the country's Alpine Rescue Corps. Officials didn't say where the 56-year-old woman was from in Canada. She was joined by a 56-year-old man who is now being treated for severe hypothermia. The pair had called for help last night after the snowstorm hit, and they were left stranded 2 kilometers away from a mountain refuge. Rescue workers reached them, but the bad weather prevented efforts to bring the woman to safety, and she was pronounced dead on the mountain.
In Vietnam, the death toll of the aftermath of a typhoon has climbed to at least 233. Rescue workers have recovered more bodies from areas hit by landslides and flash floods. Waters from the swollen Red River in the capital, Hanoi, are beginning to recede, but many neighborhoods remain inundated. Further north, experts are predicting it could still be days before any relief is in sight. Typhoon Yagi made landfall Saturday, starting a week of heavy rains that triggered flash floods and landslides.
Family members of Israeli hostages taken captive by Hamas on October 7th staged a protest in central Tel Aviv today.
We need the government to understand that they must sign this hostage deal as soon as possible. Hostages are dying and we have no more time.
Family members and supporters blocked a bridge and called for a ceasefire and hostage exchange deal. Hamas-led fighters took around 250 hostages when they burst into Israel on October 7th and killed 1,200 people. Around 100 hostages remain in Gaza, at least a third of whom are believed dead. More than 41,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's military response. Israel says about a third were militants.
Meanwhile, the United Nations is condemning an Israeli airstrike in Gaza that left 18 people dead, including 6 of its workers. UNRWA says its staff members were killed in the strikes Wednesday at a school in central Gaza and at the Al-Nusrat refugee camp. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres responded by calling the lack of civilian protection in Gaza unconscionable. Israel says the attack was legitimate, accusing Hamas of using the school as a command and control center and using civilians as human shields.
Ukraine is renewing its plea to Western allies to allow their missiles to be fired at military targets in Russia.
As CTV's Heather Wright reports, that request is prompting renewed threats from Moscow as its invasion shows no signs of slowing down.
Ukraine has been firing Western missiles at Russian targets for months, but only those inside Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin is warning if any hit across the border, he will consider Russia at war with NATO.
This is a carefully planned statement by the Russian president designed to have that chilling effect.
It's one of many red lines Moscow has drawn and ignored since it launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine 2.5 years ago. But it's a red line both the U.S. and U.K. are at least considering crossing, as the country's two leaders meet to discuss Ukraine's request to allow it to use Western-supplied missiles to hit military targets inside Russia.
Ukraine really needs to defend itself from these sort of strikes, and holding them back from targeting largely the places where these strikes are originating from is a massive amount of hypocrisy.
Russia carries out missile and drone strikes on Ukrainian cities on a daily basis, and Ukraine wants to use the sophisticated missile systems of the U.S. and U.K. to strike back at the Russian sites where these attacks are launched. At the United Nations today, Russia's ambassador repeated Putin's warning. That will mean that from that moment, NATO countries are starting a direct war with Russia.
The United States has not ruled out allowing Ukraine to use its missiles inside Russia, and if it does, there are doubts Russia would even enforce this new red line and start a second war with NATO. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he would approve the Ukrainians' request.
Canada fully supports Ukraine using long-range weaponry to prevent and interdict Russia's continued ability to degrade Ukrainian civilian infrastructure and mostly to kill innocent civilians in their unjust war.
The Prime Minister said Canada and others are unequivocal in their stance that Ukraine must win the war against Russia and will continue to support those efforts. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are keeping a busy campaign schedule in hopes of securing American support and their votes.
The Republican nominee spoke at one of his golf courses this afternoon, attacking the Biden-Harris administration's handling of the southern border.
We went from a terrible border to a great border very quickly. I did a great job. And then I come in and I look at what's happening now, and the only difference is that the border in 2016 was 1/20th what it is now. We have the worst border in the history of the world. There's never been a border like this.
Trump also repeated his belief that he won the debate against Kamala Harris this week, despite polls and pundits suggesting otherwise. It was at that debate that he repeated unsubstantiated claims that migrants in Ohio were eating residents' pets. U.S. President Joe Biden called him out today.
Community that's under attack in our country right now. Simply wrong. There's no place in America. This has to stop what he's doing. It has to stop.
Donald Trump hasn't backed down from his comments about Springfield, Ohio, which has seen an influx of migrants from Haiti in recent years. But local officials there have stressed there is no evidence for the claims the former president's been making. They also say there's been a number of bomb threats made to buildings in the city. The vice president, meanwhile, is campaigning in Pennsylvania today.
There are a lot of people in Pennsylvania who deserve to be seen and heard. That's why I'm here in Johnstown. And I will be continuing to travel around the state to make sure that I'm listening as much as we are talking. And ultimately, I feel very strongly that you got to earn every vote. And that means spending time with folks in the communities where they live. And so that's why I'm here. We're going to be spending a lot more time in Pennsylvania.
While Americans are keeping a close eye on national polls, the electoral votes in Pennsylvania and other battleground states will determine who wins the White House in November.
Boeing Starliner spacecraft may have returned to Earth without the two astronauts who rode it to the International Space Station, but they say they're looking on the bright side.
We're excited to fly in two different spacecraft. I mean, we're testers. That's what we do. You know, we look at different aircraft, spacecraft, whatever, evaluate it, and that's a pretty unique opportunity.
Every single test flight, especially a first flight of a spacecraft or an aircraft that has ever occurred, has found issues. That's things that you just cannot think about. 90% of our training is preparing for the unexpected.
NASA decided it was too risky for the test pilots to fly back on Starliner this summer as planned, so they're waiting for a SpaceX rocket to bring them home in February. Suni Williams said she's grateful to have the chance to spend more time in space. Butch Wilmore says he's preparing to vote from there.
Well, have you noticed what day it is? It's not your average Friday. It's Friday the 13th.
A day rife with superstition and, for a small community on Lake Erie, tradition. Motorcyclists have converged in Port Dover. Visitors come from near and far every time Friday the 13th turns up on the calendar. As it so happens, the weather is gorgeous this year, which helps add to the turnout. The local mayor anticipates 75,000 visitors or more to the town of 8,000 people.
It's a must-see, a must-do if you have a bike. Everybody loves to get the T-shirt and the patch and say they came.
This is the first of two Friday the 13th this year. The next one is in December.
Still to come tonight, it is one of the most popular spots for tourists in Toronto, and it's the welcome mat to City Hall. Tonight, why one councillor says Nathan Phillips Square needs a makeover.
And I'm Pat Foran coming up on Consumer Alert. If you have a vehicle, it's something you never want to happen, getting a flat tire. If it does happen, do you know if your car has a spare? More newer vehicles are coming without a spare tire. I'll have that story. That's just ahead.
And there's no spoiler alert here. It remains beautiful here in the city of Toronto and right across the GTA. And we're holding on to that heat as we head throughout the weekend, staying above seasonal. Coming up, we'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including what we can expect throughout the weekend here at home and maybe if you're heading up north. And I'll have your full forecast. All those details are coming up after the break. And stay with us. We have another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
If you're driving, it's something you never want to happen. The dreaded flat tire that leaves you on the side of the road.
In the past, if you had a flat, you could always count on having a spare in the trunk, but now that's not the case. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Nathan. And Michelle, vehicles used to come with a full-size spare tire, but now many cars don't have one because the tires are too heavy and they're trying to make them more efficient by having a smaller tire, sometimes called a donut spare. But now, depending on the car you have, it may not have any spare tire at all. A flat tire often seems to happen at the worst time. Luz Placencia was driving to a spa appointment when she felt a thud.
Sure enough, I had a flat tire.
If it happens, the best advice is safety first.
In the event that you do get a flat tire, you should pull off the road as far as you can in a safe area.
Next, you'll want one of these, a Space Saver spare tire, also known as a donut. It's replaced the full-size spare in most passenger cars. With any luck, you might go years without needing to use one, but you shouldn't forget about it.
Spare tire expires just like your other 4 tires.
To check the age of your spare, look at the last 2 digits of the dot number on the sidewall that indicates the year the tire was manufactured. If it's older than 10 years, replace it. And a spare tire only works if it's properly inflated. Check your spare's pressure and condition when you check the pressure of your other tires, and fill if needed. When Placencia got a flat, she also got a surprise.
Unfortunately, my car doesn't come with a spare tire.
Now about 60% of new cars don't have a spare tire.
In an effort from the manufacturers to lower production costs and reduce weight for fuel economy, they're just leaving the spare tire out. So don't ever assume you just have a spare tire.
Instead, you may get an air compressor or a can of tire sealant that is supposed to patch a damaged tire and get you to a shop where it can be repaired or replaced. Some cars, mostly luxury models, come with run-flat tires that allow you to continue driving for about 80 kilometers at modest speeds, enough to get you home or to a service center for replacements.
You shouldn't be driving around on these tires or a patch tire because that's not a permanent fix.
The other option is to call for a tow truck and have a new tire installed at an auto shop. And if you're not sure if your car has a spare, it might be a good time to check. And whether you have a spare tire or an inflator kit, you should also know how to use it so you'll be prepared if you get a flat tire. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, I'm sure you've heard this a lot. It's the weekend. Get out and enjoy it. It's the weekend. Enjoy it. But this time around, you really need to do this.
Oh, my goodness. If I had a cottage to go to, I would drop all the plans and go there because it's actually cottage weather.
It is. And we have kind of these sweet weekends where we get into that fall season where it's still really warm outside. It still feels like summer, and it's so hard to not get out and enjoy it. But I know obviously we're kind of getting into that time of year where the transition takes place. This isn't one of those weekends, so get outside if you can. This weekend, probably next weekend, and then we will start to see that more traditional fall transition take place. But it is going to be in the 20s, feeling into the 30s, very reminiscent of kind of those early and midsummer days. And as we step through the rest of our evening, if you do have plans tonight, it will be fantastic. As we make our way throughout the day, though, we did see some fog, and that will continue into the day tomorrow, but it really burned off quite quickly, and it became a really beautiful second half to your day. We saw lots of sunshine out there, and it's going to continue to stay super nice. Now, temperature-wise, it is hot outside still, and as we see kind of the cooler air move in the early morning hours, see all that heat kind of start to move back in. We get the transition and that fog kind of starts to happen. So we'll have almost an identical morning tomorrow. Today, though, very different story. We're holding on to the warmth right now. 24 feeling like 29. It's still really warm through Windsor, through Timmins, even up through Peawanuck. We're still sitting in the 20s. As we head in towards our evening, we're sitting at 16. We should be at 12. And although we do see a northeasterly wind and a bit of a cooler wind, it won't do much to help kind of alleviate any of that mugginess out there as we head through the overnight. Likely to see that fog again early in the morning tomorrow in parts of southern Ontario. But as we head into the afternoon, it is hot, it is sunny, it is humid. We're looking at humidex values right across the board into that low to mid 30 range. As we head throughout the day, again, we're just looking at a really beautiful kind of typical summer-like day. We do kick off the fall equinox on the 22nd, but we are holding on to the heat right through to then. Through the rest of our evening, there really isn't much happening as far as the forecast radar picture goes. And as you step into your day tomorrow, think about sun protection. You got to stay in that summer mindset because we're still holding on to that summer-like weather as we step really into almost the very end of September. As we make our way throughout our Saturday as well, Even if you're heading up to the cottage, it is going to be beautiful. It's one of those weekends where if you want to just kind of escape the city, it's a great one. If you want to stay downtown, there's so much going on still right around the GTA. As we head into Sunday, more of the same. Again, this ridge in the jet stream, that kind of green line there, that's kind of separating, that's your kind of viewpoint for separating the cold air to the north and the warm air to the south. It overtakes almost the entire province as we head throughout the weekend and into the beginning of next week. We do have, again, some fog advisories in place, not for the GTA, but we're kind of anywhere Oakville down towards Niagara. So if you are traveling early in the day tomorrow, that could kind of impede your vision a little bit, at least through the morning hours. As we head throughout your Saturday, Sunday, 27, 26, we're looking at beautiful temperatures above seasonal. We should be around 21. Getting through the majority of next week, really beautiful as well. The chance of maybe a passing shower on Wednesday next week, but I'm not mad at it. Michelle, I'll send things back over to you.
Me neither. Thank you, Jess. Still to come on CTV News, he's an iconic Canadian singer and songwriter, still going strong in his 80s. That he is now the subject of a new documentary premiering at TIFF. We'll hear from Paul Anka after the break.
Sepsis kills one person every 28 seconds around the world, and it can leave survivors with lingering health problems.
But as Pauline Chan tells us, new research at St. Mike's is taking a new approach to the condition.
Dr. Claudia Dos Santos' research is inspired by her work as a critical care physician.
It's overwhelmingly frustrating when you do everything right and people still die from sepsis.
And it costs the Canadian healthcare system $2 billion a year.
Sepsis happens in individuals who have that overwhelming and abnormal response to any infection.
It can be caused by bacteria, fungus, or viruses. Current treatments try to either kill off the microbe responsible or support the body's organs.
Starting dialysis, starting medications that help the blood pressure stay stable.
But Dos Santos' research takes another approach, trying to control the immune system's response.
We adapted it to actually deliver microRNAs that we had identified from stem cells that help fight sepsis and not only treat the hyper-inflammatory response that you get in sepsis, that overwhelming inflammatory response.
Shannon McKenney has had sepsis 3 times over the past 13 years, and it's left her with debilitating after effects. Her mobility is severely impaired. She gets migraines, insomnia, difficulty eating, and more.
A key point that is lost is, when you're discharged from the hospital, it's like, congratulations, you survived. But what kind of future do I really have?
But Dos Santos' work gives her hope.
It's going to save lives. Like plain and simple, like early detection, early intervention, that is the key to saving lives.
The drug is currently being tested on animals, but the team here at St. Mike's hopes to begin human trials possibly as soon as late 2026. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
With flu shots available next month in Ontario, a new survey shows only a slim majority of Canadians plan to get one this year. Rexall surveyed more than 1,500 Canadians online late last month. 52% of adults plan to get their flu shot. 35% said they were not, while 13% were still undecided. Among those firm in their decision not to get the shot, most cited personal beliefs and a sense they didn't need the vaccine. Health experts say getting vaccinated helps prevent the spread of the flu, which remains in the top 10 leading causes of death across Canada.
He is one of the most prolific and successful singers and songwriters of his generation, and he also happens to be Canadian.
Now, Paul Anka is the focus of a new documentary which premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. And CTV's Andrea Case is live downtown tonight with more. Andrea.
Michelle and Nathan, Paul Anka is maybe small in stature, but he is legendary in the music business. And here's a quick story for you. When Johnny Carson was starting The Tonight Show, Paul Anka said to Johnny Carson, "You should have a theme song and I'm going to write it." Carson said, "I don't need a theme song." Paul Anka is such a smart businessman, he said, "I'll give you writing credit on it." And the rest is history. That song is still playing to this day. Da-da-da-da-da. All that to say, Paul Anka has lived such a life, of course, there has to be a documentary. the original King of Pop on King Street. Paul Anka walked to the red carpet at the Royal Alexandra Theatre to promote his new biography, Anka, His Way.
We interviewed a lot of people. Everything in life is the right team together. It's about trust. We had a good meeting. He understood music. And we said, let's go ahead. And John's done a marvelous job.
From Ottawa to Hollywood, his story has been told before, but never with Anka's complete involvement. Director John Maggio.
There was a moment in Tokyo. I followed Paul to Asia. He was on a tour in Asia. And there was something about that moment. Paul entered the Tokyo Dome from the back of the stadium quietly. Music is ramping up, and everybody just reached out and just wanted to touch him. And this was thousands of people, didn't even speak English. They were singing along to his music note for note. And I realized not only what the audience got from Paul, but what Paul gets from the audience. I think it has a lot to do with his longevity. It just feeds his soul in a way. He's a pure entertainer. And that, to me, that was the moment when I was like, I think I know what this film's about.
Producer Randy Lennox.
I've been friends with Paul for over 20 years because we inducted him into Canada's Walk of Fame. So enjoyed a great relationship and have kept in touch. The guy's a legend. 7 decades.
Anka has written with everyone from Michael Jackson to Drake, and with his long list of hits including Put Your Head on My Shoulders, Puppy Love, and I Don't Like to Sleep Alone, and of course, who could forget My Way. With so much music to mine from, it's only a matter of time before his life story heads to Broadway.
Well, we've been talking for years about Broadway. It's a tough area to deal with. I haven't had the time to really focus until recently. It won't be a jukebox show. It's going to be something very legitimate with a good book.
And it'll probably come to Toronto eventually. Okay, so tonight we're on the red carpet with Tegan and Sarah Quinn. They, of course, are Canadian musicians, and their career is going to be documented in this film. And also, they've had quite a relationship with social media, and that is a big part of it. Catfishing. You kids know what that is. So reporting live from King Street, we'll also have Lucy Liu tonight at 11:30. Nathan and Michelle, I'll send it back to you. And everybody else, I'll see you at 11:30. Good night.
Thanks, Andrea. Pop star Justin Timberlake pleaded guilty to a reduced charge today in his drunk driving case in New York State.
This is a mistake that I made, but I'm hoping that whoever's watching and listening right now can learn from this mistake. I know that I certainly have.
Timberlake pleaded guilty to driving while ability impaired. That's less serious than his initial misdemeanor charge of driving while intoxicated. The 43-year-old was arrested in June after police say he was weaving out of his lane and ignored a stop sign. Timberlake was ordered to pay a $500 fine and perform community service.
Friday the 13th could turn out to be very lucky for someone, as the largest lottery jackpot ever in this country is up for grabs. After the break, we'll tell you just how high the Lotto Max jackpot could go if no one wins tonight.
Steady, continuous. And it went on for maybe a good 7 minutes, I'd have to guess. It sounded like machine guns or something to me.
Updating our top stories, signs of a shootout remain at the front entrance of a high-rise on Chalk Farm Drive. This after a shooting last night that sent an 18-year-old to hospital with serious injuries. No arrests have been made, and neighbors want the property manager to bring in extra security.
I basically booked a flare flight home as well. So I'll fly Air Canada if they don't strike, and I'll fly Flair if they do.
Passengers continue to make backup plans to ensure they can get to where they're going if Air Canada pilots end up walking off the job. As the clock ticks towards strike action, the airline has started changing some rules involving cargo just in case there's a work stoppage. The two sides remain at an impasse, with wages being the biggest issue.
This year alone, we've reversed 50 overdoses and saved 50 lives this year.
And protesters rallied outside one of the Kensington Market overdose prevention site, hoping to keep the site open despite new rules from the provincial government. The site is among 5 supervised consumption sites scheduled to be closed by the provincial government, who is promising new treatment centers.
Remember to keep up to date day and night at ctvnewstoronto.ca and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
Canadian stocks hit another record today as Toronto catches up with Wall Street in 2024. Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg brings us the latest in business.
Hello there. Toronto's benchmark stock index posted a new record closing high today, just shy of 23,600, as gold once again traded in record territory. Big names such as Loblaw and Sun Life also traded at all-time highs. Toronto is now up just over 12% this year, narrowing the gap with the US market, which is ahead 18%. Over the past decade, the Toronto index has risen 50% in price, and dividends have added as much again, for a total return of just over 100%. But US stocks have done much better, producing a total return of 240% over 10 years. The Canadian dollar changed hands at 73.57 US cents, down a fraction. West Texas Intermediate oil was at $68.45 US a barrel, down 32 cents. Western Canadian Select oil, by our latest fix, $54.21, up $1.52. And the TSX Composite ended at 23,568.65 to set a new record closing high, up just over 93 points on the day. That's the latest in business. I'm Andrew Bell of BNN Bloomberg.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
More than 33,000 aircraft assembly workers are on strike at Boeing factories in the U.S., dealing the troubled airplane manufacturer another blow.
Our members rejected the contract by 94.6%.
Union members rejected a tentative deal that would have increased wages 25% over 4 years. The work stoppage will not disrupt commercial flights immediately, but it's expected to shut down production of Boeing's airliners. This has been a difficult year for Boeing, including an incident that saw the door plug on one of its planes blow out in mid-flight in January.
And workers at a Walmart in Mississauga have voted to become the first in Canada to unionize at one of the company's warehouses. Unifor announced the decision earlier today, saying it began its campaign to unionize the facility back in December of 2023. The Ontario Labour Board awarded the workers a vote, which was held after more than 40% of the facility's workers signed a union card this summer. Walmart says it's reviewing next steps. Tonight's Lotto Max draw is set to be one for the record books. The OLG says the $75 million jackpot is the largest in Canadian history. That's because the cap for the lottery has been increased from $70 million to a maximum of $80 million. The jackpot is expected to reach that level on Tuesday if no winning ticket is pulled tonight. The odds of scoring the main jackpot are 1 in 33.3 million. There are also 12 Max Million prizes available.
After the break, what one city councillor says needs to be done to fix up one of the top spots for tourists in Toronto. Stay with us.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
It's a top spot for tourists eager to get a picture with the Toronto sign or maybe visit one of the many festivals that take place on the site.
But a closer look shows plenty of wear and tear, and now one city councillor says it's time to fix up Nathan Phillips Square. CTV's Natalie Johnson has the story.
Stop for a selfie in Nathan Phillips Square.
It's good, it's great. Especially a place for Toronto, right?
And on the face of it, it's picture perfect.
I saw what they have on Instagram, and in Instagram it's very nice, for example, the lights and everything.
But others say look closer and it's a case of Instagram versus reality.
The birds ruin it.
I mean, it doesn't look like much.
This is when I want to see it popping, you know?
Toronto councillor Paul Ainsley agrees.
Pylons like this in the middle of Nathan Phillips Square, to me, it's not acceptable.
Saying he's been noticing parts of the square fall into disrepair.
More and more things on the square don't seem to always be functioning.
1.8 million people come through here every year, but the elevated walkway is often closed.
You can't walk around the whole square.
And the stage is frequently sealed off.
It seems to be closed more often than not.
If you walk all the way up to the green roof, it's not always open either. And under these pylons are fountains that have sat idle.
They're supposed to spray up about this high. They haven't worked since before COVID. Originally, I was told they were shut down because of COVID. And now I'm told the pumping mechanisms in them all need to be replaced.
A spokesperson telling CTV News, quote, the city is in the early phases of work to ensure the holistic rehabilitation of the fountain. Timeline for completion of work will become clearer as early phase investigations are wrapped up. Ainsley is now calling for an official update on what's holding up the upkeep and asking staff to look into the possibility of upgrading the amenities.
I see people tripping over wires, trying to get, going from different events, tripping over wires because the electrical system hasn't been upgraded under these patio stones.
Looking to bring out the best in a space used by both Torontonians and tourists.
For the square in front of Toronto City Hall, we need to be doing a lot more to keep it up.
Calling on the city to get serious about the square. Natalie Johnson, CTV News.
Well, even as is Nathan Phillips Square, and all the city sites are just beautiful to visit right now because we have the weather and it's going to continue right through the weekend.
If you have outdoor plans, it'll be great. If you don't, make outdoor plans because it'll be great. We're looking at temperatures in the mid to upper 20s throughout the majority of the weekend, and then the humidex values have it feeling into the 30s. So we're having this kind of late blast of summery weather as we step in towards the final days of the summer season before the fall equinox begins on the 22nd. Not much going on in the way of anything on the satellite and radar picture, so beautiful for getting out tonight. We're sitting at 24, it feels like 29, and everybody holding on to the heat. Now, around home tomorrow, a whole lot of sunshine, a light breeze out there. Get out, enjoy it, but put on the sun protection and hydration. As we head in towards our Sunday, even nicer. The only chance of rain right now is Wednesday next week, but it'll be brief, and I'm looking at all that sunshine.
We are too. Thank you, Jess. That's our newscast, but join Heather Butts tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zoraida Allman with your next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us here at CTV News, thanks for watching and have a great weekend.